Sara Blakely became the youngest self-made female billionaire when she sold her company Spanx in 2012. But she didn't practice the traditional habits that you might expect from a billionaire. She wasn't working 18 hours a day or practicing elaborate health optimization routines. In fact, she's a mom with 4 kids and has been present with her family throughout the entire journey.
The work-life balance Sara had throughout the whole journey was incredible. Like, she does carpool line, she makes breakfast.
So in this video, I'll share the key habits Sara lives by that not only helped her become one of the most financially successful women on the planet, but also build a balanced life that prioritizes family and fun. The first habit that Sara is probably most adamant about is crafting an information diet that promotes a growth mindset. And this started when she was just 16.
I was riding my bike with one of my best friends at 16 and she was run over by a car and killed in front of me. And then a few months later, my dad left home and my parents separated and ultimately got divorced. And when my dad moved out, he came into my bedroom and he handed me a cassette tape series called How to Be a No Limit Person by Wayne Dyer.
Those cassette tapes ultimately changed Sara's life.
I put them in my boombox in the middle of my room and hit play and started to cry and thought, I've just spent 16 years in school being taught what to think, and no one has ever taught me how to think. And holy shit, I can teach myself how to think in a way that makes life better and propels me forward instead of holds me back.
She listened until she had all 10 tapes memorized front to back, and even her friends made fun of her for listening to them.
You know, everyone else was listening to Bon Jovi and they'd get in my car and be like, what do you really want for your life? You know, where do you really want to end up?
To this day, consuming motivational content that strengthens her growth mindset is a habit that Sara still practices.
I really want a portion of what I listen to every day to be something telling me that I'm unstoppable and why not me and I can do it.
In fact, she curates her social media feed to only show positive motivational content.
On Instagram, I don't follow that many people, but some of the things that I follow are positive quote message, pages. I like my feed to be filled with stuff that makes me feel good and makes me think glass half full.
So just like the food that you consume, think about your information diet. Is it helping you become stronger and grow, or is it just numbing your mind? So what are the habits that you can implement? And if you're really serious about making changes in your life, I actually added all of Sara's habits discussed in this video into our app Habit Sprint. And inside, you can actually compete with other people who are also doing all of Sara's habits. And to really hold yourself accountable, you can even stake money to do Sara's habits each day. So maybe you stake like $10 a day to limit your time on social media to just 5 minutes a day. Because if you're like me, you might say that you'll do these habits, but then a week later, life happens and you ultimately quit. So by staking money, you actually hold yourself accountable to follow through on these habits. Because if you do take Sara's habits seriously, you might end up a billionaire. In fact, 20 years later, when Sara did become a billionaire, her friends from high school, who had mocked her for listening to these motivational tapes, texted her this.
And all they wrote was, damn, should have listened to that shit.
Sara's family also had a very interesting outlook on failure.
My dad growing up would actually encourage me to fail. So I would come home from school and he would say to my brother and me, so what'd you guys fail at this week? And if I didn't have something, he would actually be disappointed. So, it flipped the whole model on its head, and I would come home from school and I can remember I'd be like, Dad, I tried out for this and I was horrible. And he'd be like, way to go, and he'd high five me.
And this clearly had an impact as he raised 2 successful entrepreneurs, as Sara's brother is also actually quite successful. What most people don't realize is that failure and success actually stem from the same place. It's taking a risk and trying. And you can't have one without the other. So the more you fail, the more you're also going to succeed. In her opinion, the only true failure is not trying.
So for me, going through life, my only failures are when I didn't try it because I was scared.
Yeah.
So the habit here is to actively seek out failure. If you want to be like Sara's father, you could also create a ritual of sharing as a family one thing that you failed at that day. Or you could also just keep a daily journal and write one thing that you failed at during the day. Because if you know that you have to write down a failure that night, you're more likely to actively seek out failure. And it'll push you to do things that you might think are good ideas, but you feel too scared to try. Today, our focus is pulled in so many different directions. Think about it. When was the last time that you just sat in silence to think? For Sara, this is when her best ideas come to her. In fact, this is actually how she came up with the name for her company.
And one day, sitting in the car, the word Spanx, S-P-A-N-K-S, came to me. I actually visualized it across the dashboard in my mind, and I pulled off the side of the road and I wrote it down, and I thought, this is it. This is perfect.
So creating time to just sit and think is a habit that she's developed.
You got out your calendar today and looked at the next 2 weeks or month. How much time do you have allocated to daydream? Where in your calendar do you think of nothing that's on your calendar? Because when you're daydreaming and you're letting your mind wander, that's where the magic really happens.
Even now, she purposefully drives around in her car just to create time to think.
I live 6 minutes from Spanx, but I will wake up an hour earlier, or I will leave my house an hour earlier and drive around town aimlessly just to get in my best think time.
So figure out where it is that your mind wanders, whether it's in the shower, on a walk, while you're driving, or going for a run. And then schedule time in your calendar this week for like 30 to 60 minutes with absolutely nothing, no agenda, just think. Some of the best opportunities come from really embarrassing situations. And the people who opt to avoid the embarrassing situation ultimately miss out on great opportunities. A really good example of this is when Sara was trying to get Neiman Marcus to sell Spanx. So she cold called them and they agreed to give her just 10 minutes of their time.
I went in and halfway through my pitch, I could tell I was losing her. So I said, you know what, will you please come to the bathroom with me? And she was like so buttoned up. I mean, Neiman Marcus, like her pen matched her belt that matched her shoes. And she was like, what?
You're like, what am I going to do in the bathroom?
I know. I was like, just follow me to the bathroom and show you my own panty line. And I went in the stall with Spanx in my pants and without it in my pants. And she was like, oh, I totally get it. It's awesome. And I'm going to put it in 7 stores.
Had she not been willing to put herself in a somewhat embarrassing situation, Sara would have missed out on this opportunity. But how do you overcome this fear of embarrassment? Well, it's really just like building a muscle. You have to actually practice it.
I will practice embarrassing myself. I mean, I'll randomly just start singing in an elevator. If I notice, I will feel if it's been too long since I've been really mortally embarrassed. And then I will do it because if you're seeking it, it loses its power over you.
So create a habit of embarrassing yourself on a regular basis. In fact, Sara even did stand-up comedy for a while. Now, beyond just doing your own stand-up comedy routine or singing in an elevator, there are a few other ways that you can practice embarrassment. First, you could try doing Noah Kagan's coffee challenge, where you just ask for like a 10% discount on a coffee. Another way that I've practiced embarrassment is just doing street interviews with people. So going up to them and asking them a question. The goal is to collect evidence that embarrassment is survivable. And every time you survive embarrassment, the fear has less power over you. And then when you're faced with an amazing opportunity that's just on the other side of embarrassment, you're a lot more likely to embrace it. Another habit of Sara's is to always plan family time.
No, we plan stuff. Like I plan that I'm going to see my parents a certain amount of times a year. Then I'm going to go on a certain amount of trips, one-on-one trips with my kids. We go away once a quarter. We plan a trip, alone time. We have date night every Wednesday. I might not see Sara every single day, every minute of the day during work, but we know Wednesday nights we're having date night. We know we have our family dinners. We know the weekends is our time. So you have to plan. Otherwise, you start to spiral.
Even when she was building her business, her husband, Jesse, claims that she still prioritized family over work.
This is what I think is the most incredible thing that is never shared in the media stuff, is the work-life balance Sara had throughout the whole journey was incredible. Like she does carpool line, she makes breakfast, she's at all the sporting events, plans the vacations for the family, doctor's appointments. Like she had that whole side of
going on too, when no one talked about that.
So the habit here is to block off time for family and relationships every single week, because you're not going to perform as well if your personal life is suffering. The next habit Sara adopted didn't come easily.
For 19 years of owning Spanx, every year I would say to my my team, I would say, guys, I'm going to start working out. And every year I would not work out, ever.
But in year 20, that finally changed.
We started by finding the exact hour every day that was going to be a non-negotiable. And once I put that on the calendar, everything else just worked around it. And it's the first year that I worked out. And that's another habit I did for myself that has made a huge difference.
In an Instagram post in 2019, she said, "These past 4 weeks have been the next level. I've biked 30 miles a day, swam, and ran up Stone Mountain." And if you're struggling to build the habit, try to schedule a specific time of day to exercise. And then protect that time the same way that you would protect time for a really important meeting in your career. Most people get distracted because they have an idea and they immediately act on it. And as a result, you're always chasing new things and you never really stick with anything long enough to see any progress. So to improve focus and consistency, here's a habit that Sara adopted.
I have 99 pages. I don't know why it's 99, but she told me the other day it's 99 pages, single space typed of ideas. And I email it to myself and then I just keep them and log them.
Writing the idea down gets it out of your head so that it stops competing for your attention. And then you can come back to it in like a week or so if you still think that it's really worth pursuing. The last one is a bit more of a lesson than a habit, but it's arguably the most important of them all. Sara tells this story of how she was on a reality TV show, and one of the tasks they had was to jump off of a cliff and then land in their partner's arms.
And if he caught you, you were okay, and they'd put you back on the cliff. And if not, you fell 385 feet on a bungee cord.
And Sara, who was one of the least athletic people out there, was the only one to actually make the jump.
I am beyond terrified of heights. It's like I'm so afraid of heights. I cry on airplanes still during takeoff a lot of times.
Oh my God.
And I was one of the only people to make the jump. Richard didn't make the jump. All these other guys that were like amazing athletes didn't make the jump.
And when asked how she made the jump, she said that she was aiming higher than her partner. So even though she fell short of that initial goal that she was aiming for, she still hit the real target.
I always talk about aiming high and the importance of aiming high in life. And then I think all of us, we don't aim high enough. And so watch where you're aiming. And that's saying, you know, if you shoot for the moon, if you miss, you're at least with the stars.
Yeah.
And afterwards, everyone was like, Sara, how did you make that jump? You're literally like the only contestant. Look at you. I said, well, I was aimed at the pulley 6 feet above his head. Where were you aiming? And I didn't even look at him. I aimed 6 feet above his head and I landed at his waist and he caught me. And everybody else was aiming at his face and landed at his feet and missed.
And if you're serious about hitting your goals this year, it really starts with building small habits. If you want to try Sara's habits for the next 30 days, we created a custom habit tracker in habit sprints with all of Sara's habits. And you can compete with others who are also doing her habits. And if you really want to take it seriously, you can stake money to hold yourself accountable to do them consistently. And why not? The worst thing that happens is that you experience a little bit of discomfort for the next 30 days while you're adjusting to these habits. But the best thing that happens is that you change your life. Because in 20 years, do you want to be a billionaire like Sara? Or the friends texting her that said that they should have listened to her?